That's really lovely. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. Peter Ohring, fantastic professor of math, computer science, and new media. He absolutely loved technology, loved violin. We're both present today. I've been thinking of what to say to honor Peter. I realized that it was Peter who always reminded me that what community really means, and that it involves participation in real time, being together. He would always remind me that we can't do everything online, and encourage me to call more meetings. He was probably the only professor on campus to say, let's have more meetings. And he would always arrive with cookies that he baked himself for everybody. So as sad as it is to be here today without Peter, I think he would be tickled to know that he encouraged us to come together, to be here as a community of friends, to support one another, and to remember together how present Peter was and will remain in our lives and our hearts. And in keeping with the Ohring philosophy, we'll have a reception after the event complete with cookies. So please join us. And I'd also really like to thank Joe Mackay for organizing everything today, and Peter's family for being here, Mary and Isaac, and all of you, all of Peter's colleagues and students and everyone who loved Peter, and Rachel. Thank you. And special thanks also goes to Tom Schwartz for creating this event and supporting us. And I'd like to welcome Tom to say a few words. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Michelle. This is one of those events that shouldn't take place, that based on, of course, an event that should never have taken place. And the college misses Peter dearly. I want to just say, first of all, that we've thought about various ways of memorializing Peter's work here, and we have determined that the best way is to establish a scholarship in his name that would be given to a student or students who will reflect the commitment to the institution and the integrity and the ethics in which Peter conducted himself. And I am sure that that will be funded through the Purchase College Foundation to begin with, but that students who bear that scholarship will bear it proudly. Let me just say that to me, Peter was one of those faculty members, although I did never get cookies from him, I want to point that out, who was always, it was absolutely clear his level of commitment to students, his level of commitment to the institution, and we didn't always agree, but I always agreed that Peter came to whatever position that he came to from an absolute position of fidelity to the institution, which for me is of utmost responsibility. And I remember the last meeting I was present with Peter was a meeting of an important committee of the faculty, and I left the meeting feeling that Peter was at the meeting and that therefore this committee would be well served and would step up to the plate, which I had asked the committee to do, and Peter's presence there would ensure that. And it was soon after that Peter left us. I am not in a position to comment on Peter's personal life, and I've learned more about him than I knew. He wasn't somebody who came in and banged on his chest about anything he did with his family or outside the institution, but in the institution I knew through various aspects of his work how committed he was. And so I know that took a lot of time, and I know it took a lot of time away from his family, but I think you appreciated why he did it, and we certainly appreciated his presence here. So, Mary, I can't, I'm not a clergyman, I'm not a rabbi or a priest, and I can only say thank you for lending him to us and for allowing him to do what he did so well here for us. And I assure you that the scholarship that will continue his name here will be awarded with great respect to everything that he did for us. So thank you, and please come up.
On behalf of the entire Ohring family, I would like to thank you all for your prayers, good thoughts, and all the many ways you have helped us through this difficult time. We are deeply moved by the outpouring of support we have received these past couple of months. And thank you for this beautiful service, for everybody who put it together, and for just being here. I don't think that my words can really do justice to the kind of person Peter was, but I'll try. He was kind, loving, generous, dedicated to his family, friends, students, and colleagues. Peter was the ultimate family man. He was always there for us, strong for us. Nothing made him happier or more proud than our two wonderful children, Isaac and Rachel. He was so excited when they were born. I remember when I was in labor with Isaac, Peter was watching the printout as the machine measured my contractions. Every once in a while, he'd exclaim, "Wow, this one's off the chart." He also wanted to take the printout home to share with one of his math classes. When Rachel was born, my mother was staying with us, as she had been when Isaac was born, and she told me how cute it was that Peter took Isaac to the party store to get a banner and balloons and decorated the house for our homecoming. Tickled pink that in addition to a beautiful son, he now had a beautiful daughter as well. My husband used to joke that there should be a competition for new dads. It would be something like the Olympic Games, but with events like the car seat installation, the portable crib in which you had to either set it up or put it away as quickly as possible, and the ultimate test, packing the car, in which you had to fit the luggage, the portable crib, the stroller, a week's worth of disposable diapers, toys, and other baby paraphernalia into the trunk of a VW Fox for the long drive to Maine or Maryland to visit the grandparents. Peter was a great husband and father. He shared in the feeding and diaper duties. He cooked and washed dishes and took the family on outings and vacations. He taught Isaac and Rachel how to ride a bike. He played with them, sang to them, and read to them. He was so happy when Isaac graduated from high school. Peter was a member of the Board of Education at the time, and so he himself was able to hand the diploma to Isaac. Peter beamed with love and pride as he danced with Rachel at her bat mitzvah. I'm sure that these occasions were among his most treasured moments. Peter loved all children. In many ways, he was a big kid himself, playing games of frisbee or hide and seek, or just getting silly with Isaac and Rachel, nieces and nephews, or the neighborhood kids. He loved teaching and was always looking for ways to make his courses more meaningful or interesting or more flavorful. I remember him baking X cookies and other goodies to take to his classes and seminars. My husband was an all-around good guy, a true mensch, When we were still renting an apartment, he used to mow the lawn for the landlords, who were senior citizens. Last year, during one of our visits to Maine, my mother was taken to the hospital. While my brothers and sisters and I were busy with my mom and her doctors, Peter was busy preparing a delicious pizza dinner for all of us. Peter packed a lot into his 55 years. He loved hiking, bicycling, tennis, gardening, dancing, music, good vegetarian food, and being with family and friends. He had a great sense of humor and loved a good joke. It's still hard to believe that I won't see him working on his laptop or hear him playing his violin or wake up to the smell of his delicious scones. I miss his voice, his laughter, everything about him. He was my best friend and my soulmate. Peter, we all miss you, but I know that your presence will always be with us. I also know that you would not want us to be sad forever, but to cherish your memory and to embrace life as enthusiastically as you did. Thank you.
As I think about just what made Peter Ohring such a beloved colleague, a number of remarkable qualities come to mind. First, the first thing that occurs to me is that unlike many of us, Peter did not build a wall between the professional and the personal sides of his life. The two flowed back and forth seamlessly. And his approach to the challenges of his work typically drew upon that fusion, and was enriched by it. With his colleagues, he was personal without being intrusive. With his students, he was informal without being unprofessional. He welcomed his students into his home, he fed them in class, and he involved his family in his life here on campus. Peter preferred modes of pedagogy and scholarship that enhanced social interactions. And he managed to do all this while maintaining a playful attitude. But even his playfulness seemed to serve a deeper purpose. In his own modest way, his efforts were directed towards improving the lives of his students and his colleagues, the programs he was part of, the college, and even the outside world. Indeed, one might say that everything Peter did served many purposes at once. Although Peter had a unique ability to keep the big picture in mind, it was never at the expense of the small personal details, the ones that let people know that he cared about them, He was modest. There was no drama, just attentiveness, remembering, following up, and generating creative ideas to solve problems. As examples of these remarkable qualities, when Peter's students were learning computer programming, they were also gaming, or they were planning ways for people to navigate the campus during the plaza construction. While they were learning to collect and analyze data, they were also learning about each other. Peter had a strong commitment to our Summer Bridges program, where community college students live on campus for 5 weeks and engage in an intensive research experience. I'll never forget his students' presentation last summer at the symposium. After they completed their excellent PowerPoint presentation, they surprised us by taking over the podium for a few minutes to tell the audience what a fantastic mentor and human being Peter was. And they presented him with a certificate of excellence. I've never seen anything quite like it. Peter and one of his Bridges students, Errol McKinson, presented their big data project at the SUNY Diversity Conference in Albany last October. I don't think any other program participants co-presented with a student. It's fair to say that Peter took a personal interest in every one of his students. Peter was the same way with his colleagues. Several have told me that Peter was their first friend outside their board of study, or the first one to welcome them to Purchase. He wanted to know as much as he could about everyone, and once he knew what your goals were, he became a one-man team to help you achieve them. If you were single and looking for a partner, he was on the job trying to find you a match. If you had a family, he wanted to know what your kids were up to. On a personal note, Peter was a wonderful mentor and friend to my son Alex, a mentor in his pursuit of mathematics, and with Isaac, a wonderful audience for his piano playing. And Isaac, we loved the tapes of your violin playing that your dad shared with us. During his 23 years at Purchase, Peter inspired a generation of students to use their skills to deepen and broaden their relationships and to improve both the local environment and the world at large. I'd like to end with some quotes from his students' postings on Facebook. He always had a side project for self-motivated students. He gifted me with wonderful opportunities, inspired wonder in technology. He was proud of how far I came in new media and outside Purchase. He believed in me. Thank you.
Hello. The first time I met Peter was exactly 11 years ago. It was over email, an invitation for a phone interview. Next, an email invitation for a campus interview, a process many of us are quite familiar with. I don't recall too much about my campus interview, but I do remember a moment looking up at the audience during my job talk and seeing Peter smiling, a big smile, and nodding his head with encouragement. This was the beginning of his mentoring me. I also recall talking with him on the phone the summer before I began teaching at Purchase. I was sitting in my kitchen in Brooklyn, and we were going over my fall schedule when he dropped the bomb: college writing. As those of you who were hired in that period will remember, we had a clause written into our contract that we would teach one section of college writing per year. But what do I know about teaching writing? I asked Peter, already a person I felt comfortable and friendly with. I was hired to teach new media, I implored. His reply, which I still remember, was, "But your application was so well written. I know you'll be a great writing teacher too." Peter was a natural mentor to his colleagues, students, and of course his children. He was generous with his time, patient, caring, and thoughtful. He always served up sound advice. I no longer teach college writing, but I definitely still teach writing. And I've come to realize that helping my students master the art of the written word is one, if not the, most valuable skill I can offer them. Peter guided rather than directed. He listened carefully before speaking. You knew his opinion. You always knew where he stood on an issue, but he allowed your own voice to coexist and even take the lead. That was because, above all, he was invested in and cherished community. He was not interested in a merely functional community, but a phenomenal one. He was always suggesting a party, retreat, or field trip to bring us all together. He often utilized the magic of food, baking bread for meetings, ordering pizzas for advising events, keeping a jar of Halloween candy on his desk all year round. He was committed to attending openings, screenings, lectures, both on and off campus. He encouraged us to find ways to share our research and creative passions on campus together and not leave that essential part of ourselves behind. He demonstrated how community is the foundation of intellectual life, the core of the college, and the greatest pleasure of the job. The summer before I began teaching at Purchase, in 2003, Peter threw a welcome to New Media party for me at his home in Connecticut. He baked quiches, Isaac played the violin, and Janine's mother played the piano. Looking back, it was such a perfect introduction to Peter and his philosophy of putting community and food first. As many of you know, Peter and I collaborated on a carpool application for several years that we called Purpool. One of my favorite memories of Peter was a time we drove up to Albany together to meet with our funders. It was the middle of winter and a very cold day like today. During the ride up and back, we had the rare luxury of loads of time to talk. We discussed the app design, government bureaucracy, new media curriculum, family and work balance, and so forth. At one point, he pulled over to a rest stop, and I rushed in to use the bathroom. When I got back into the car, I continued the conversation right where we left off, rambling away. When I looked up, I saw a very startled stranger staring back at me. Just behind him, in another Toyota Camry, I saw Peter watching the whole encounter with terrific amusement. Peter was someone you could really talk to. We did not agree on everything, and sometimes we strongly disagreed. But there were never hard feelings, or not for very long. This is because our work relationship was built on trust and friendship. His commitment and heart were unwavering and so endlessly inspiring. And for that, we all truly adored him. With Peter's passing, there's a physical and emotional hole on campus. Along the New Media corridor in Nat Sci, we are reminded of our loss. A door that was always open is now shut. But we can turn to that well of inspiration he gave us, and there is so much to draw from it, and find comfort and a way to move forward with him.
I'd like to welcome Isaac Ohring Peterson to play for us now. Thank you, Isaac.
Brooke's story is of interest to me as I was thinking what I was going to say today, because I guess I was on the opposite side of it. I date back to when Peter had his job interview here and was trying very hard to remember what we thought and so on. And can't come up with too many details, but we're certainly glad what we did then. Peter's existence here at Purchase is striking in the sense of how coupled it is and was with the history of Purchase, and I'll in a moment get a little bit of the history of Purchase to give you the details. But first, my own best memories of Peter. The year was 1992, and Purchase, which had been on the internet, this newfangled idea since 1987, Peter, I believe, walked into my lab and for the very first time saw both the internet in action and email. And he obviously was absolutely blown away. Whether he also, for the first time, saw the Mosaic browser, which the new media folk may vaguely remember, I'm not positive of. But that was striking. Now, coming back a little to the history of Purchase, the founding president of Purchase, Abbott Kaplan, had tried very hard to figure out ways in which we could bring the arts and letters and science together. And there were various steps along this, but nothing much happened really for about 20 years. In the early 1990s, and I'm not seriously claiming that it was just because Peter saw the internet, there was a group of us who sat around multiple arts venues and probably primarily natural sciences, saying, what can we do to really achieve Abbott Kaplan's goal? And the committee must have gone on and on for 5 years, if I had to take a guess. Somebody may be able to correct me. And the striking thing was Peter's perseverance. In some sense, the new media program owes its existence to Peter's work during the 1990s. And as the students, as the faculty, continue to make this program effective and very, very visible on campus, in many ways we have the sad occasion today of realizing that it was Peter's baby in some sense. To sit in a committee which, and many of the faculty and staff will know this very well, where you have a sense that there's no progress being made, and then after 5 to 10 years, all of a sudden it begins to click. And I don't literally know if it was when Brooke got hired that it really started to click, but in many ways that is probably the strongest tribute one can make to Peter. I personally will miss him a great deal. And rather improbably, and we didn't discover this till about 10 years after Peter came here, I worked with Peter's father down in Washington and had the scary situation, I was over in England in early December, of having to break the news of Peter's death to colleagues of Peter's father as well. In any case, I will miss Peter a great deal, and I think we all owe him a tremendous debt.
I guess if I believe in anything, as a biologist, I believe in life, that long, sacred story of life, that is our story. We are born into it, we add our narrative to it, and too soon, that story goes on without us. Always too soon, and doubly so in the case of Peter. My story with Peter involved a lot of carpooling. We were carpool buddies. I had a meeting early when I arrived on campus with Peter. We went over to the hub to talk about some issue. I don't know, instructional technology or something about technology on campus. And as soon as Peter realized that I was living in New Fairfield, my carpool status was a done deal. So Brooke mentioned the per-pool application. We were in there as the Northerners. I mean, there are other parts of my story with Peter, shared meals with our families, although clearly not often enough. Pet sitting for each other. New Fairfield politics with Peter on the Board of Education and me on the Board of Finance and the Democratic Town Committee. But always there was carpooling. The Northerners group in per-pool, not only Peter, but Nancy, Ryan, my son Eric. So full cars or not so full cars, depending on who was coming in, 3 to 5 days a week, throughout the school year into the summer with the Bridges program. So that's a lot of time to talk about family, to talk about teaching, to talk about politics, to gripe about Purchase, to gripe about New Fairfield. I remember a long conversation wherein Peter tried desperately to convince Eric that he could start a role-play gaming business in New Fairfield. Or the times, especially with Ryan and Peter and Nancy in the car, where we would kid around and joke. And Peter was clearly a happy person. The times when Ryan and I would try to convince Peter that yes, he could actually do things around the house, projects and so forth. And I remember how excited he was when he discovered Teflon tape when he was replacing some faucet or something. All the talk about, what was going on campus, the work on opening up Peters Gate, the back entrance to campus, so that those of us who have the northern commute can cut off some of the miles and time. Those times when I was a captive audience to Peter's probing questions about why does the college do things this way? Why is the administration doing that? What's up with CTS? Why can't ITAC do this for us? You know that Peter was not shy with his opinions. And the times when no conversation was there and we would just listen to NPR News on the way in. 45 minutes to an hour each way. 3 hours one time in a blizzard. So, I mean, those are the memories that have become part of my story now, and I am richer for it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to start off with a quote that Peter once told me a long time ago. About 2 years ago, he told me, "I'm glad to see you didn't give up on new media." This was right after I finally passed my advanced standing after the second attempt, and I was ready to give up after the first one. Peter Ohring loved to teach because he loved to learn. He always saw some kind of strength in each student. I've at least always saw, and he definitely saw something different in each one of us. And I always thought that it was this passion for learning that allowed him to engage with and inspire many of his students. To show more of this, you can just look at his door, and I marked down some of the quotes on his door that really spoke out to me. What Peter Ohring taught me was, this was a quote on his door, "To believe in myself because he believed in me." Another quote I saw on his door was, "I learned about what it meant to be a new media student. I would not be where I am today without him." And one last quote that I liked on his door was, "To get excited about everything, to connect fully and enthusiastically." And then one nerdy thing that I really liked on his door was the Peter HTML script, because he always taught so many people how to code, and there's so many people that don't think they can code until someone like Peter shows them and believes in them enough to teach them. The title was "Thank You, Peter Ohring, for Teaching Me," and in the body of the script was to understand people and create for people of all shapes, sizes, and types, as I always will. Chill in peace. And there was a link, that link to heaven, and it says Peter next to it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Something all the students valued in Peter was his openness, not just in how he received everyone, but in how his door was always open. Last year, around March, I was having a really tough time. I ended up walking out of one of my classes, and I was very close to having a panic attack. It happened that when I walked out of the class, I was actually in social sciences, which is the same place where the new media wing is. And I immediately rushed over to the new media wing, and I saw that Peter's door was open. I was comforted by the fact that even though I was talking really fast and I wasn't making much sense, Peter called me and made me realize I needed some serious help. In a way, even if it's really small, just by him hearing me out multiple times, he saved my life in a way, because if it weren't for his door being open, I probably would have spiraled into a very dark place and have done something very bad. Through his kindness and his words, I'll always remember Peter Ohring, and I think it's safe to say that most of his students will too. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I'm really tiny, I'm sorry. Nobody ever prepares you for the important things. Human knowledge has gone so far that we know the exact distance between the earth and the sun. We know over 1 million plant species, but no one can answer how to heal after the loss of a loved one. It is because healing is subjective. As I read the email confirming that he had passed, an emotion hit me. My first thought was, he was not going to be there for my graduation. In retrospect, that was such a selfish thought. And what no one prepares you for is the guilt that surfaces when your loved one has passed, especially when it comes to the way we mourn. Some people cry, have nightmares, feel guilty when they have a good dream. Some people want to be a hero and try to make everyone feel better in hopes they'll feel better themselves. Some people feel guilty that they feel nothing at all. Some people feel guilty that they don't seem as sad as their peers. The guilt that we get to be alive, and Peter doesn't. Sometimes you feel guilty when you have drowned yourself in your own personal life, and for a moment you forget. And when that happens, there's nothing but more guilt. But what is left to console us is that thing that evades us at times, and that his memory, Peter leaves behind a legacy of selflessness, a man who made time for everyone and anyone, the patriarch of new media. We honor his memory by remembering him and remembering his impact, and most of all, to be selfless.
We all meet people in our lives that inspire us or push us forward to accomplish the dreams and goals that we've set out for ourselves. But sometimes recognizing who those people are isn't as easy. Although Peter was my advisor, I didn't go to him very often. But when I did, I knew I could count on him being there. And whatever I expressed to him, whether it was a worry or a concern, I could be sure that it would stay in his mind. Peter had this initiative to help that wasn't as apparent at first, but It was very genuine and true. We often do all of our speaking through words. We make claims and promises, plans that we never go through with. But Peter was different. He would sit and listen to everything without saying as much in return. And I guess what I wasn't able to grasp until much later was that his true responses came in actions. And I think in our lives, those are the responses that count the most and make the biggest differences. Much of what I have today, I owe to him. My job, my internships, experiences that I would have not gone through if he hadn't been there to make them possible. My biggest regret is that although I knew how much he'd done for me, and I'd made plans to thank him properly for it, I just never went through with it. I waited and procrastinated, thinking that I had all the time in the world. The truth is that I can't even begin to express how much influence his actions had, how much they really paid off, and how profoundly grateful I am. I can't speak for everyone when I say these things, since at the end of the day, I can't claim to have known him as well. But I think it's safe to say that if he would go as far for someone that wasn't as close, for a student that he saw every couple of months at most, I can only imagine the things he did for those that were very close to him. So I'm really sorry that it took me so long to say this, but thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Mackay. I'm the last speaker. Before I forget, I want to thank everyone who talked and helped put this together today, including there's a video in the hallway that Allison Maroney put together, a former student, and Peter was her advisor, and he especially liked this video, so enjoy it. When I first came to Purchase, I had the same experience that Brooke did. Peter really took me under his wing. If you remember back, those of you who know me, if you remember meeting me the first time, it was probably Peter that introduced us. Peter was one of the most socially adept nerds I've ever met. Know that in my vocabulary, nerd is held in the highest esteem. It truly does take one to know one. Nancy Zook and I were commiserating earlier and looking through our images that we have more pictures Peter took of us than we have of him. So my first year of teaching was the last year they had the graduation out on the lawn, and Peter and I were sitting next to each other, and then the faculty were facing the stage, and I looked at the program and I saw that Chuck Schumer was speaking, and I said to Peter, look, this is great, Chuck Schumer speaking. And Peter's like, yes, it's good. And I said, what? No, what? And he said, well, he comes every year and he gives exactly the same speech. And I was like, no, you're exaggerating. Surely you're exaggerating. So Peter didn't say anything. He just smiled and waited. And then it was a bunch of speakers and talkers. It was 45 minutes later, and I'd completely forgotten our conversation. And Chuck was introduced, and he was coming to the podium, and Peter turned to me, and he said, when I was 17, I got my first job working at a summer camp upstate. I had completely forgotten our conversation. This seemed like at once the strangest thing to say, but also I was like, yeah, I could imagine Peter at a summer camp upstate. No, Peter didn't turn. He kept staring at me like Michael Jordan, who's just hit a game-winning shot and doesn't even look to see if it goes in the basket. Because as he's staring at me, Chuck Schumer says, when I was 17, I got my first job working at a summer camp upstate. Peter was so delighted. He hit it word for word. You know that look that the Muppets get when the Muppets are really, really happy? Peter had that look. So he does the second line, and he gets the second line, and he does the third, and I'm me to you to Chuck Schumer, and I can't laugh out loud because the story is about life decisions. And finally, Chuck sells the joke, and I'm laughing louder than anyone in the place. That was the Peter I like to remember. It was funny and happy, and a little bit of a you-know-what to disturber thrown in on top of it. Every year I teach a class where we take the video game Pong and we remake it. And we show this called Pong every year, but every year it's an acronym and the students name it something else. One year is Players Occupy the New Gallery, Play Our Nerdy Games. One year the students wanted to call it Peter Ohring, Nicest Guy, and I wouldn't let them. My argument was that Peter has nothing to do with this class. The student's defense was, yeah, but it's true. When I told Peter about this, he tried to give me a lesson about the democratic process and allowing students to express themselves freely. Peter lost his re-election bid to the Board of Education, and to console himself, he started reading a 4-inch thick book about esoteric math history. This was not an attempt to bury himself in research like ice cream for the rest of us. It genuinely made him happy. Sudden deaths like this leave a big hole, but it also leaves a bunch of small holes. I saw a student outside his office about a week after the funeral, and she was obviously upset, and she said, please, can we get into his office? And I said, well, I don't have a key, and you know, why? And she said, well, there's Halloween candy in there. And it seemed a little bit out of place, but the more I thought about it, the more I knew exactly how she felt. We were supposed to eat that Halloween candy. A couple days before his passing, we had a conversation about Shannon entropy, and I was teaching it to my students, and he had said offhand, oh, you know, the math in Shannon entropy is really pretty simple. And I went back and looked, and it's not. And, Peter, what did you mean? I still need to finish that conversation. The very last conversation I had with Peter, we were talking about a class sort of based on this book he was reading about lost mathematics. And he was remembering logarithmic table books that you have to look through to look up large calculations. And he was saying the students don't even know they existed. And I was thinking about teaching lost skills like semaphore and telegraph, and how this could be a fun class. So we'll never get to teach that class together, and that makes me sad as well. Anyways, that's all I have, and thank you so much, and please, let's have some cookies and share more stories upstairs. Thanks a lot.